Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Gavin. Glad that you're here. If you like to cut through the fluff and sensationalism and true crime, you found the right place here on YouTube, and I'm glad you did. Today we are going back to the case of Judge Kevin Mullins at age 54. He died, shot and killed on video by his sheriff in the county down there in Letcher County, Kentucky. I'm trying to make this very, very brief. We've covered it quite extensively here on the channel, and last week I was on Surviving the Survivor, and one of the panelists was Mr. Ned Pillersdorf, who is an attorney representing a couple of ladies that have filed a civil rights lawsuit. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ned Pillersdorf. Ned, thanks for being here.
I appreciate you having me.
Glad you would do that. I know that this case has garnered quite a bit of national attention. I think maybe sometimes it might feel like we wish there was more, but at least here on YouTube and on certain cable TV news channels, word is getting out about this case. Can you tell us a little bit about how you are, I know it's tangentially connected, but how you're connected to this whole saga about the killing of Judge Mullins?
The way I got in the case, myself and my co-counsel, we started out representing two women, Sabrina Atkins, who's alive, and Jennifer Hill, who's now deceased, so we represent her estate. And we filed a civil rights lawsuit in federal court. And what we alleged was that Judge Mullins had a bailiff who also ran the ankle bracelet program, and that the bailiff sexually exploited these two ladies for sex. Some of the sex occurred in the judge's chambers. And we also named Sheriff Stines, or I guess former Sheriff Stines now.
Right.
And the theory against Sheriff Stines was that he knew or should have known that the sexual exploitation of the ladies was going on. The sexual exploitation fit a pattern that, frankly, we're concerned is not unusual. My theory of my civil rights criminal defense practice, certainly, when I take on a case like this, there's two goals. One, to help the people in front of you. In this case, Miss Atkins, who was basically, I guess raped is the right word, basically told that if you don't have sex with me, I'm going to report you to the judge and you're going back to jail. I'll take your ankle bracelet off. You don't have to pay the $360 a month. So basically, it was sex by extortion. And the other issue is not only just helping Sabrina Atkins, who's alive, and Jennifer Hill, who unfortunately died of a drug overdose after we filed suit. I'm convinced that what happened to these ladies, the sexual extortion, is not an isolated incident in Letcher County. The big change in the law, not the law, but if you walk into an Appalachian criminal courtroom today, it's different than it was when I started practicing here 44 years ago. 43 years ago, Appalachian courtroom, it was 99% men charged with bootlegging, assault, burglary. Today, it's a typical day for me is representing, I was just in a place called Knott County, which borders Letcher, and I had 4 clients. All 4 were women charged with drug charges. How do I get them out of jail? Well, there is just, the options are as follows. It's controversial. I don't like it. We are, unfortunately, a lot of our judges are cash bond judges. In some states, it's limited or restricted, certainly not Kentucky. How do you get them out? One, do an ankle bracelet. A lot of these young women have kids, and even though it's $360 a month and they don't have much money, an ankle bracelet, if I can get them out on an ankle bracelet, I do that.
Okay.
Who runs the ankle bracelet programs? Well, it's really unregulated. And I think that's one of the roots of the problem. There are literally these entrepreneurs, for lack of a better word, They buy the equipment and they go to their local judge. It may be almost a patronage thing, and said, "Hey, judge, if you put these women on ankle bracelets, I'll monitor them." And the reality for these women is, and it's one reason, I've done a lot of national interviews, and I have an agenda. I care about these young women. The agenda is how easily they can be exploited. I don't think in my particular case, I sued Fields.
Yeah.
The agenda was these women know a simple phone call to the judge that, hey, you violated a condition of your drug court or ankle bracelet, a simple phone call to the judge, they're thrown back in jail. So when Phil says, well, you don't have to pay the $360 a month, let's go have sex in the judge's chambers, which happened twice. So what happened chronologically, and I like to go through this because there's been some misreporting. Here's the chronology, and here's how Sheriff Stines comes into view.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear this part.
Okay, the chronology is we filed the lawsuit for the two ladies, and we had plenty of information that the bailiff, drug court operator Fields had done this to at least three women. Only two are in the lawsuit. And in the real world of practicing law, there's this thing called text messages. And Fields sent text messages to Sabrina, which left no doubt that there was a sexual relationship. And by the way, it can't be consensual when you're basically in custody.
Yeah.
Or an ankle bracelet.
Well, and those text messages were copious. It was like on Facebook Messenger, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Okay.
And generally, when I file a civil rights case against, occasionally we have corrupt public officials, and I've sued a bunch of them here in Appalachia. The Attorney General's office doesn't really want to rush in and help my cases. They're awfully protective of public officials. But in this case, with the text messages, and I give high marks to the Kentucky Attorney General office, something I don't routinely do. They came in, and Matt Easter, he did a 4 or 5 hour proffer interview. The word proffer is important. What a proffer means is, tell me everything you know about all the misconduct of Fields, and I don't care if it's rumors, double hearsay, triple hearsay. Proffers to get people to just speak broadly. So that interview was recorded, and recently what happened is some media contacted the Kentucky Attorney General's office and said, under the Kentucky Open Records Law, we want the audio of what Sabrina Atkins said. Now remember, this is before Fields even got indicted. And in the audio, I'll just say what's in the audio without commenting or editorializing. Sabrina says that she saw a video of Judge Mullins, who was eventually killed in his chambers, basically having sex with a woman, presumably so that woman could get out of jail.
Right.
Now, that audio has been widely publicized, and I just like to put that in context. We did not release that audio.
Yeah, actually, on my channel, I've listened to all of it. I've listened to Sabrina's interviews. There were a couple. Jennifer's interview. I've listened to an interview with Mr. Fields, all done by Detective Easter. I got it through a open records request to the Attorney General's office. So yeah, I've heard it all, and I was shocked by it.
And I give them high marks for releasing that. Thereafter, Fields got indicted.
Right.
Then thereafter, Jennifer Hill passed away, and we substituted in. Thereafter, there was what's called a criminal mediation, and that's something brand new in Kentucky, which was attended to by Miss Atkins, Mr. Fields, and the criminal mediation program. It's really this has been a real change in criminal law. What I have found is in the criminal mediations I've done, 80–90% of the times, you get a plea agreement.
Can you describe what a mediation process is? I mean, I've been through like civil mediations, but what does it look like in criminal law?
A criminal mediation is something that was resisted for a while, but there's retired judges, one of whom is my wife, former Kentucky Supreme Court Justice Janet Stumbo. And what I have found that the dynamic that makes the criminal mediations work is the judge comes in, the defendants in one room, the victims are in another room, and I have found that where the victims can vent to a judge, not just a local lawyer, just a retired judge, and then if the defendant can vent and give his side to the judge, and then it's like shuttle diplomacy. The retired judge says, well, they've offered you 5 years to serve, and they'll dismiss this charge. And it goes back to the defendant and says, well, I'd like 5 years probation, but I'll agree to register as a sex offender. And the judge goes back and forth.
Okay.
And I want to say, I've probably done 30 or 40 of these. And I think I'm probably at 80, 90% of getting a plea settlement. And the dynamic is, people who are not in the court system don't understand that the person charged wants to vent. And the fact that it's a retired judge and the victims want to vent. Sometimes the victims complain, the Commonwealth attorney doesn't have time to sit with me, but if they just get to tell their story, and then you get these experienced judges and you get a plea agreement. Circling back to Ben Fields, there was a criminal mediation.
Okay.
And I'm not going to criticize what happened. From my perspective, though, I wanted Fields to plead guilty to the charges. And he pled guilty to the sodomy, which involved the oral sex, and the rape charge. And interestingly, one of the charges he pled to, it's almost funny, was perjury. The perjury was when he actually swore out a warrant and had my client thrown in jail for bail jumping. Well, the bail jumping was, she said, no more sex. And he said, well, you're off the ankle bracelet. That's bail jumping.
And he said that to Matt Easter in his interview. I done wrong. He was trying to describe it as a consensual, affair. And I picked, he basically said, he picked her up. He incriminated himself in that. To the day I die, the moment I will never forget when Sabrina sat there for that 4 or 5 hour interview. Yeah.
She was composed talking about the extortion. But when Fields said, well, if you want the ankle bracelet to be off this month, or this week, whatever it was, you need to have sex with this elderly gentleman. In other words, he pimped her out.
Yeah, it was like to his uncle or something. It was weird.
Yeah, and at that point, Sabrina completely broke down. And, I know it's horrible. He was sexually extorting her. But to me, the pimping, that was just beyond the pale. And I have told the national media that they turned that courthouse into a brothel. You've got at least 3 women being hit on by this deputy.
Yes, because he was indicted for a third case. It wasn't just Sabrina Adkins and Jennifer Hill.
And there was another woman whose that evidence is in our case. We don't represent that woman, but that woman's mother called and complained, hey, Fields is extorting my daughter. And the Attorney General's office came up with that evidence. Where Stines comes into view is, and I guess this is one reason I've been deluged with national media, he was in my office on a Monday. We were taking his deposition in a civil rights case. And in fairness to Stines, he's not directly accused of any sexual activity, improper sexual activity. He's accused of, in a civil rights case, he knew or should have known Fields was doing this.
Is there a legal difference between the two? Like, would he face different?
The difference is, you can be held liable civilly if you knew or should have known this activity was going on and you tolerated it. It was basically a de facto policy there were various complaints, and instead of the sheriff's office doing something about Fields, we're the ones who got something done about Fields. We went to the Attorney General's office.
There were other complaints.
Showed them the text messages, and you heard the interview with Sabrina. So Stines is in my office on Monday.
Okay.
And I've been asked this question a lot because he would eventually, 3 days later, gun the sheriff down, gun the judge down.
It's this, yeah.
I mean, that's a shocking video. There it is.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like that. And people ask me, what was Stines' demeanor? And I've, deposed other sheriffs, and I've sued Steines before, actually. His demeanor, what adjective you want to use, I thought it was odd. It was a tense deposition, but he would, my co-counsel asked him kind of direct questions of not particular importance, background, and there were these long pauses, the times he didn't respond. And then after this shocking shooting took place, I mean, my first thought was, is this related to the lawsuit?
Of course.
And then there's an amazing video of Steines being arraigned. He's in what's called the Leslie County Jail. He's standing next to a sheriff, and a public defender showed up. And the judge asked him some, simple questions. And it was these long pauses, hesitates. A couple times, I don't think he even answered the judge's question. And when people asked me to describe his demeanor at the deposition, I said it was the same unusual demeanor when he was arraigned. Now think about
what
this.
Would it normally be? What would it normally be? I mean, you'd sued him before. What was his normal comportment?
He was a typical Kentucky sheriff, combative, articulate, personable. I mean, these guys, every sheriff in Kentucky is elected. And you think you need to understand about Letcher County, the two most recognizable human beings in Letcher County is now deceased Judge Mullins and Stines. Everybody knows the sheriff. Everybody knows the judge. Small town.
Right.
That's it. One sheriff, and there's two judges in Letcher County, a circuit judge and a district judge. But what's
the district
unusual,
judge, real quick, the district judge is it here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have a similar thing. We have district level judges, then we have what we call the Court of Common Pleas. And basically everything starts at the district level. Everything from landlord tenant stuff or speeding or criminal stuff starts at the district level and then moves its way up to the criminal court, if there isn't a quick resolution to it. Is that the way it is there? I mean,
exactly. That's it.
Judge Mullins, anything that happened with the law in Letcher County, it started at his office?
Occasionally they can go directly to the grand jury and indict. But even if there's a murder charge, you generally get what we call an F number. That means you're charged with a felony, but you're in front of the district judge.
Yeah.
So Mullins would handle misdemeanors and people who've been charged with felonies but not yet indicted. And he'd handle the small claims in the district court. Then we have the circuit court. My point is, a district judge everybody knows who they are. It's the people's court.
Yeah.
Judge Mullins' name recognition, probably 99% in Letcher County. It's the people's court.
Well, especially if we're talking about a place that has high drug abuse rates, that they would all be going through his court, right? I mean, it does seem like there's an element of frequent flyerism, right? Somebody who is in and out of court all the time.
Yeah, and how can I diplomatically say that? I was not an admirer of Judge Mullins. This is an anecdote. This is me personally. But clearly after I filed Sabrina's lawsuit and Jennifer Hill's lawsuit, I guess we ruffled feathers in Letcher County. And Sabrina was back in jail, and she had what's called an F number, which means she's in jail charged with a felony, bail jumping. And she had other charges. Sabrina had struggled with, she had a number of DUIs, driving without a license. Typical female criminal defendant I have. And when I went in front of Mullins, I don't know if anybody's retrieved the video or if there actually the video exists. I had about a 30, 45-second hearing before Judge Mullins. And at that point, I asked Judge Mullins to recuse. The basis, not being very complicated, Judge, in the lawsuit we filed, there's an allegation that your bailiff had sex with my client in your chambers.
In your chamber, right.
And Fields didn't deny that, by the way. And, I guess if you read a transcript of what Judge Mullins said to me, it doesn't sound that bad. It says, Mr. Pillersdorf, I can be fair and impartial. I don't necessarily I have to recuse. Now, he did recuse. It was about a 45-second, 1 minute court appearance. Sabrina appeared by Zoom. She was in jail. And he did recuse, but this is me subjectively. I felt very uncomfortable with his demeanor, the way he assured me he could be fair and impartial, and the fact that he wanted to stay on that case. It just is me subjective, bothered me. And frankly, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I have a volume practice. I would not go back to his court after that appearance. I thought I had touched a nerve with the judge, and I don't think it's fair for me to go into court with a client when I think, frankly, I don't think the Judge Mullins appreciated me, one, filing the lawsuit, suing his bailiff, and two, asking him to recuse.
So
but as
he
a
might
criminal defense lawyer,
retaliate or something like that against your client, or there maybe not even pure retaliation, but may not.
Judges do not like to ask to be accused, but in my opinion, he should have automatically. Now, he did recuse. And like I say, this was a 30, 45-second, 1 minute court appearance. But it had an impact on me. And, like I say, I was uncomfortable in that court appearance, and I would not go back in front of Judge Mullins again. I never did.
Are district judges out there in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, are they elected officials as well, or are they appointed?
Every judge in Kentucky is elected from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And they are the most recognizable human beings in the county, with the possible exception of sheriffs.
Wow. Okay. One of the things that one of the common themes that I got on the channel as we were listening to Mr. Easter interviewing both of your clients, he also interviewed Mr. Fields. Let's see, I think that was it. But one of the common themes that kind of went through that, a lot of people did not like Detective Easter saying things like, "Hey, was it consensual?" He was really asking questions that a lot of people felt like, I guess, were kind of on the side of law enforcement. I had to keep reminding myself and others that they got an indictment and a plea out of this, right? How did you feel about the interviews that he did with your clients?
The bottom line is they indicted, they got guilty pleas, Fields served time. I give the Attorney General's office high marks. That's an investigative technique. I guess in one sense it could be consensual, but legally it's not consensual.
Legally,
I mean,
of
who are we
course
kidding
not.
here? I mean, this is just sex extortion. And like I say, one of the reasons I'm speaking out is just these women are so vulnerable. This is a new thing. Ankle bracelets, drug court, and we have this. It's almost like a marketplace. These entrepreneurs want to do these ankle bracelet programs, and I'm absolutely sure this does not just occur in Letcher County. One of the things I learned in a somewhat related case, by the way, coincidentally, while the deposition of Stines was going on, I actually left. My co-counsel did the deposition. I left. I was settling a case with the Pike County Jail, and similar thing. There was an employee who worked for the catering service who pled guilty to having sexual relations with 3 different women in the jail. And I settled that case. Basically, I was on the phone settling it while the Steines deposition was going on. And a few years ago, I did a case If you Google Little Sandy Prison, it was 4 correctional officers, myself and another law firm represented. I represented 2 women. They represented 2 correctional workers, and we got a nice $1.6 million verdict, similar to the Fields case, that the people in the prison knew or should have known that this prison guard was masturbating and sexually grabbing these women. And I got interviewed by National Public Radio, and they did some research and said something I learned that I didn't know. The level of sexual harassment in the workplace is actually higher in corrections than in other workplaces. In
This
other
is
words,
between the workers, so like male and female corrections
yes,
officers. Is that what you mean?
you're sexual harassment in the workplace. Where are you if I'm the father of 3 daughters. My daughters go out into the workplace.
Yeah.
They go into the workplace. Where are they more likely to be sexually harassed? Working in the local jail or in the local prison? Than Walmart? Absolutely.
Wow.
That's just a fact. Something I learned that I didn't know, and frankly, I learned it from the National Public Radio interview.
Wow. One of the things that kind of struck me about your clients, Ms. Atkins and Ms. Hill, well, I guess I want to put this in the form of a question. What is it about your clients that made them come forward? Because I would imagine that this has happened. Well, in fact, Sabrina Atkins said that it was just kind of known in the prison. What made them decide to finally come forward?
Well, Sabrina, even though she's had some challenges, she has an arrest record. By the way, they sent her to prison for 3 years over this.
Over what? The bail jumping?
She had a number of charges, and she was sentenced to 3 years, got paroled. The thing about, as a lawyer, I want to know if a client's telling me the truth. And with Sabrina, she had the text messages, and she struck me as someone credible, intelligent, and frankly, it's the heartbreaking thing I see every day. It's women who get caught in the drug culture, and then the deck is stacked against them.
Right.
Like I say, the $1,000 cash bond, they can't post $5,000. We try to get them into a rehab. Well, rehabs work half the time they don't. Try to get them into drug court. Well, sometimes the drug court works. Try to get them into an ankle bracelet program, so at least they're home with their kids. The jails here are overcrowded, and it's a cash bond. A lot of these judges are cash bonds, and it's so. What strikes me is 43 years ago, you never saw so many women in jail. If you walk into an Appalachian courtroom tomorrow, the people in the jumpsuits are mostly women. And, I have this theory. It's mostly methamphetamine or fentanyl, which is obviously deadly. And I mean, this is anecdotal. I sat through a number of preliminary hearings, and the facts were the same, I think, in all 4 cases. Boyfriend, girlfriend are in a car, driving erratically, stopped by the police. The police find methamphetamine and charge them both, and they're probably high. And then you ask these women, or even the men, you're high school educated, you've got a job, and suddenly your life's gone downhill. You knew or should have known methamphetamine was addictive. And what I hear, and this is anecdotal, some of them view the methamphetamine as sort of like Viagra. The word has gotten out, hey, our relationship's in trouble. I've got some nice methamphetamine here, and so told me we can have this wonderful sexual experience. It's kind of like Viagra. Because I wonder why some of these people, these women, why are they stupid enough, pardon my verb, to get hooked to take methamphetamine? And
well, that's the thing
they think,
about.
well, I'll take it one time, it's like Viagra, I'll have a nice sexual experience. A lot of these people get hooked on meth and they don't realize how addictive it is. And it is incredibly addictive.
Yeah.
People on meth say when they start taking it, they don't sleep. It changes everything. It changes their judgment. and all they think about is how can I get my next dose.
No, we talk about this a lot on the channel because not just methamphetamine, but heroin before that. Right now, fentanyl is a big deal, right? It really only takes either maybe you get injured on the job and you get addicted to opioids from a prescription. Maybe you are in high school and you decide to take that one pill. Maybe you want some kind of sexual, nirvana with your partner that you're on the outs with. You have that one decision that you make a bad decision, but at that point, it really doesn't matter what that decision was because you're going to be chasing that high because of just the nature of the drug, right? At that point, they're addicts.
I think two that come to mind, two of the cases I spent the most time on last year. A young man with drug charges, a young woman with drug charges. The young woman actually had a college degree. They both overdosed after I got them probated. Worked really hard to get them probated, got them. I thought they were doing both well. They got them probated, they got jobs, and they met up with both the facts are the same. They met up with a former friend who brought some drugs along, and they're both dead. And those are tough days being a criminal defense lawyer. I went back and looked at my schedule book and looked at all the court appearances I made for these two. I think one lady was maybe 29, the other guy maybe was 25, and they're deceased, and that's not unusual. If you're going to be a criminal defense lawyer, and I guess Jennifer Hill's number 3. Now that I think about it, I made a lot of court appearances for her, and it's not an uncommon fact pattern. We are losing a generation, and this damn methamphetamine, it's so hard to get off. It's so plentiful, and it's part of the culture. Yeah. And I guarantee if you walk into any Appalachian criminal court tomorrow, you're going to hear the word methamphetamine a lot.
Well, here's a subject that I want to maybe explore a little bit with you. You talked a little bit about how Kentucky's kind of working through some new things in court. They've got some challenges like overcrowded jails and so forth. And so they've got the ankle monitor system that they're kind of exploring. They've got the mediation system that they're kind of exploring. But before we get to that, what is it about, I guess, Letcher County, let's say Letcher County, where Mr. Fields was able to just kind of get away with it, really with impunity? What is it about the culture that makes it possible for this to even happen?
Letcher County is poverty stricken. If Sabrina Atkins had money, this does not happen, correct? She could afford the $360 a month. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't get away from the poverty around here. And
what sets the pricing, by the way? What sets the pricing? Because it seems like the pricing is set so that it is unreachable.
It's these entrepreneurs and the people scramble around, and it's the free marketplace.
Well, listen,
unfortunately, it's completely unregulated. I mean, I know people who you go out and buy the equipment. Do you have a relationship with the local judge?
Yeah, it's not like they're doing any type of competitive bid or anything. They're just selling to the counties.
It looks pretty informal to me. I've had one ankle bracelet gentleman I know was complaining that this judge gives all the business to that ankle bracelet program. It's free market, entrepreneurs. It's unregulated. Now, one of the things you need to understand about these women, they know, as I said before, a simple phone call, they're back in jail.
Yes.
If somebody running an ankle bracelet or a drug court says, Judge, this woman cut off the ankle bracelet, she was gone. And this is the second time the judge says, all right, I'll issue a warrant. So put them back in jail. We'll have a hearing. These women think they will not be believed. If you're the judge and the guy you have, the guy or the people who run the ankle bracelet program says, Well, when I showed up, it was clear she had tampered with the ankle bracelet. And the truth may be, she didn't tamper with the ankle bracelet. She wouldn't have sex with me.
Yeah.
Who's the judge going to believe? The women know that. They're really they are so vulnerable. And, the reason I speak out about this is these are voiceless, vulnerable women who are easily exploitable. And I guarantee what Fields did is not unusual. One of the parts of my practice is I do sexual harassment litigation. Kentucky has a good law that we get around all the sovereign immunity problems. And what the Kentucky legislature, maybe I shouldn't say this too loud, they're in session now, they may repeal this good law. We have a Kentucky civil rights statute that says if you're the victim of sexual harassment, not only can you get your pain and suffering, you can get attorney fees. And that's unusual. That's the general American rule is if I represent you, Gavin, in a slip and fall case and I win, I can't make the other side pay your attorney fees. Okay?
Yeah.
However, with the Kentucky civil rights law, and it similar to the federal civil rights law, so what Dr. King wanted back in the day, to have what's called a fee shifting statute. So the profile I use in my sexual harassment cases, state law, civil rights, generally I am looking for one, usually a guy, who hits multiple women, multiple victims.
Okay.
Those are the cases that I have found in my law practice. I can get good settlements in, I can get good verdicts in. The tougher cases are the he said, she said.
Yeah.
The reason I did Sabrina's case, it had two things I liked. One, a digital paper trail, i.e. the text messages. Two, Fields hit multiple victims.
Yeah.
And there are these sexual predators out there, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, or the Epsteins, whatever.
Yeah.
One's not enough. It's just they get away with it so long, they get more and more reckless. And I think people don't understand that text messages, I don't know how many, that's changed the world.
Yeah.
There's a trail.
And they're so stupid. I like when we were listening to the conversation of Ben Fields talking to Matt Easter, I mean, you can go back and watch it on YouTube. I was sitting there going, what? Shut up. Why are you talking? Right? It's like, you are so stupid to have this whole conversation with somebody who's obviously investigating you. And Easter was able to just like, hey, buddy, this is it was kind of like, let's get it off your chest. It's not that big of a deal, and he fell for it. So not only is he dumb enough to talk to somebody who's investigating for serious crimes, but he's dumb enough to keep a paper trail, man, a digital trail of all the communications with your client.
Well,
Can't believe it.
Fields was on the prosecution side. He saw Easter, and this is my opinion, as I don't want to say a buddy, as someone on his side of the prosecution wall.
Yeah.
Hey, cut me a break. I've been on the prosecution side like you. Easter sentence, I think it was 6 years, a 6-year sentence, served 6 months. They venued it to another county. I've heard some social media talk. Well, what he did, he should have got a lot more time. Here's the thing about it. For my civil suit, it's important for the victims that there be a plea of guilty. I did not, under any circumstances, want a no contest plea, which often often in sexual cases, and I represent criminal defendants charged with sex crimes, they don't ever want to admit that they did this.
Right.
Maybe they've convinced their wife, spouse, or family they didn't. So often you get what's called a no contest plea.
Yeah.
Which is a compromise. But why I give the Attorney General's office so high marks is they got guilty pleas. He had to, the way a guilty plea works in Kentucky, and just about every state now, you don't just walk in and say, Judge, I plead guilty. the judge will say, did you in fact on June 6, 2023,
Yeah.
commit the crime of sodomy with the complaining witness, Sabrina Atkins? And you're under oath.
You have to
And you
say,
say, yes, I
yeah.
did, Your Honor. And do you plead guilty willingly, knowingly, and intelligently? Has anybody pressured you to do this? Are you entering this plea because you're guilty and for no other reason? And you
Yeah.
have to say that under oath. And what happened in the Pike County case, the sexual predator who had sex with the 3 women in the jail, remember, you cannot consent to sex if you're a prison officer with an inmate by definition. After he pled guilty in that case, I sued him. And we took his deposition, and he said, yeah, I pled guilty, but none of this really happened. So I said, well, so let me see if I understand that. You appeared in front of a circuit judge. He put you under oath. Yes. And when you pled guilty, he asked you questions. Did you actually do that? You lied to the judge. In other words, you perpetrated a fraud on the court. And those are the questions I asked him.
Yeah.
And so it's important for people unfamiliar with the criminal court system to say, well, I'll just go in there and plead guilty. It's not that simple. You have
Well,
to answer, and this is certainly true in federal court, and I assume it's true in Pennsylvania. You have to
no, I've been to
affirmatively
those
state on the
hearings.
record, I did those
Yeah,
facts.
I've been to those hearings, and in Pennsylvania, they'll say, why are you pleading guilty? And usually the defendant will say, because I'm guilty, or they'll say, because I did it, or something like that. But they have to say out loud why they are pleading guilty. So in your case with Mr. Fields, this, by the way, is his sex registry photo. So you've got, well, we've all complained about it here on the channel. I would say, myself included, he got 6 months in the Letcher County Jail. From what we understand, his wife was one of his jailers in the Letcher County Jail. And then he gets off on probation for probably the rest of that, 5 or 6 years or something like that. And we've all complained that that's not enough. But now what you're saying is, but you've got a guilty plea so that when you go to the civil case, I mean, the question of his guilt is actually pretty well established, right?
That was an important part of what we tried to accomplish. Once again, the reason I took Sabrina and Jennifer's case was obviously to help them, but also the guilty plea helps with the bigger picture that there's something else going on here, that it's not feels, it's how easy it is for women to be exploited. And that's one reason I'm on the show. Um, the, uh, there's a local attorney here who I always talk to. He was an anchor man forever and went to law school. And I asked him, I said, what's my talking point? Should I do these interviews? And he said, Ned, use the word sensitive. What you can accomplish in this case, this is how he gave me some media talking points advice from a media savvy local lawyer. He said, what we hope to accomplish is those who administer these programs, who oversee these programs, you said, use the word sensitive to how easily these women can be exploited. Going back to what I said earlier, they know they won't be believed. They know a simple phone call, they're back in jail, and they're just easy prey. And how often does this go on? Probably a lot more than we know. And it's
Yeah.
probably one of the most unreported crimes. I mean, think about it. Someone in an ankle bracelet says, Judge, he made an advance to me and I turned him down. This may be an individual who the judge likes, basically is feeding him all this business. And these women know I'm not even going to bother to complain. No one's going to believe me. I'm a criminal defendant in an orange jumpsuit.
Well,
Who's
and
going to believe me?
there might be some cultural issues as well. I mean, I don't want to like paint with a broad brush here, but I personally know people who are addicts, people who are recovering addicts, and they have described to me the lengths that they would go to feed their addiction. many of them do turn to sex work, right? To turning tricks in order to pay for their addiction. It's very possible that these women, not only are they very vulnerable, but they're probably, I mean, when I was listening to Sabrina Atkins specifically, I kind of felt like this is the world that she kind of lives in, right? When he was asking for oral sex first, it was just kind of the world that she lived in. It wasn't terribly surprising to her. And I had wondered about that cultural side of things too. Maybe they didn't realize, hey, this is sexual assault, right? Maybe they didn't realize there's no such thing as consent between, the power imbalance in an inmate and an officer of the court. I'd wondered
You,
about
you,
that.
you nailed it. I think power imbalance, you nailed it. What's her choice? Have a sexual event in the judge's chambers
Yeah,
or go back to the jail. And they'll go back to that jail. And, in the real world, in fairness to judges, the judge says, I'm going to probate you on these conditions. And judges don't like you being back in court being told you violated a condition.
yeah,
Um, and is it one strike you're out, two strikes you're out? Sabrina ended up getting a 3-year sentence.
yeah.
She had violations, she, driving without a license. Um, but I've got so many female clients, especially females, they just can't abide by drug court. Having said that, I love drug court.
I do too.
And,
It's kind of like
some,
going to church. Like I've loved covering drug court hearings.
yeah, and the drug courts are administered by the judges. They're generally a 1 year, you got to go a year, show up once
Yeah,
a week.
yeah,
They drug test you. They try to build your peer support. I love those programs, and they're everywhere.
yeah,
They were not everywhere 10 years ago, and they are proliferating. A number of reasons. One, the terrible overcrowding. Kentucky has one of the highest incarceration rates. Um, Cash bonds are controversial. They tried to, in fact, recently the Kentucky legislature, these groups would raise cash bonds to get so and so out of jail, and now they've greatly restricted that. You can't have a group post a cash bond for you if the crimes are more serious than, I say, your typical drug offense. They had a situation in Louisville where a group posted a cash bond, and that person went out and committed some horrible crime. And ever since then, the Kentucky legislature, and I have made the argument that it's really unfair to make these people who qualify for a public defender have to post a cash bond. And I'm not particularly successful in making that argument. And some judges are worse than others. And there's one judge I practiced in front of. I won't mention the judge's name. I practice all over East Kentucky. That judge, I don't ever remember that judge ever granting a bond reduction motion. The only success I've had with that judge is I will let your client out of jail, ankle bracelet, or drug court. But actually reducing the $10,000 bond to $500, that motion is denied, I want to say, almost universally with that particular judge. And, if I file 20 bond reduction motions, I'm lucky if I can win 2 or 3.
hmm.
The only way to get these people out is drug court, ankle bracelet, or rehab. And by the way, the way the rehab works is that's a product of the Affordable Care Act. We had the Medicaid expansion, which is a big deal in East Kentucky. And the Affordable Care Act and the Medicaid expansion pays to put people in these rehabs, and the rehabs are flourishing all over the place.
Right. They're popping up all over the place, I bet. Yeah.
And I think that's generally a good thing. There is talk that they may repeal the Medicaid expansion with the new administration coming in. If that happens, that closes down every rehab. Rehab is generally very, very expensive if you got to pay for it. But because of the Medicaid expansion, that's, is a hot political item in Kentucky. Our first governor, Steve Beshear, was a real big advocate of that when Obama was president. And then when Matt Bevin became our governor, he tried to do away with that, but the court stopped him. And our current governor, Andy Beshear, who's a lawyer, and I'm a great admirer of Governor Andy Beshear, he's a real advocate of the Medicaid expansion. And one of the reasons is, how are we going to get these people rehab if they can't afford it?
Yeah,
And
he's
there's certainly a
recognizing a
lot of people
problem.
who need it.
So here's a question for you. So whatever the cost is for the ankle monitor, let's say it's $360 a month, right? Whatever that comes out to be, it's $10 a day, basically, something like that, right?
Correct.
In any like middle class household in the modern era, in any middle class household, coming up with an extra 360 is actually kind of hard, right?
It's an issue I
And
deal with, but
we're
here's the
talking
thing.
about low income, right? How are they expecting
Absolutely.
people to be able to pay those bills? And then the other question is, for the people on these ankle monitors, like your clients, were they allowed to work as well, or did they just have to be home, in their home confinement? How do they expect them to come up with 300 plus bucks a month for the ankle monitor?
This is a subject I know well. Whether you're able to work really depends on how cooperative your ankle bracelet supervisor is. And I
Okay.
spent a lot of time um, cajoling them, calling them, saying, "Hey, this person, has got a job at Walmart. Can we work out something they can go to work?" Some ankle bracelet people are cooperative. And my point is, if they can go work at Walmart, they can actually pay the 360 next month, okay? The, the other factor in all this is, if you're on an ankle bracelet, that counts as time served.
Okay.
So one of the techniques the criminal defense bar, and I take advantage of it, is, let's say they got you on tape selling a small amount of methamphetamine, a very, very common charge. That's a 3-year sentence. In Kentucky, you're generally eligible for parole after 6 months. Okay? One way to build up the 6 months and that you never go behind bars is stay on the ankle bracelet for 6 months, and you get what's called jail time credit. And they will come up with the money, whether they have to beg, borrow, or steal, or the families will come up with the money. I say, look, let's stretch your case out, get your 6 months in. So when you plead guilty and we really don't have a defense, you're on tape, selling this small amount of methamphetamine. That's your typical case.
Mm-hmm.
I can get you out on time served. And that's how we try very few drug cases here. I like to think I'm a good lawyer, but you take a drug case in front of an East Kentucky jury, I got a guy 50
Chances are
years.
low. Yeah.
I mean, the max was 60, so I saved him 10. I'll tell you what a good lawyer I am, right? The jury was
Wow.
out 10 minutes and gave my client 50 years because he had a bunch of methamphetamine stored at his house, and I couldn't put him on the witness stand. So I got a guy 50 years.
Wow.
In other words, I can't try those cases. I could try those cases. I don't have a reasonable chance of winning. And you tell a Kentucky jury that there's reason to believe this guy is selling methamphetamine, you're looking at a maximum sentence. That's just the reality of the real world. I'd like to think I'm a good lawyer, and I've had hundreds of jury trials, but that 50-year sentence just got it about 6 months ago. It's still ringing in my ears.
Wow.
And that's not, 50 years. That's a long time.
Well, yeah.
For somebody who can kill anybody.
Yeah. Hey, I want to, because we're kind of coming up at the end here. I want to, there's a question that I want to bring up to you here from one of my viewers. So Serenity Gateway says, Gavin, I'm curious if Ned can tell us if the video was recovered. Did Ben confess to recording these crimes? If so, wouldn't he be required to surrender the videos, resulting in further investigation? I think what Serenity Gateway is talking about here is your client Sabrina Atkins claimed in her proffer with with Detective Easter that she had seen a video of higher ups having sex with girls in Judge Mullins' chamber, and she even talked about the quilt behind his desk that you can see in this picture. So, uh, do you know if that video was ever recovered? Was that part of either of the cases, his criminal case or the civil case that you're bringing right now?
Well, I have double, triple, quadruple hearsay, and I think the answer is it has not been recovered, and that the person who showed Sabrina the video, you've heard the interview,
Yeah,
was a boyfriend of the girl, and I think I don't know if it's been recovered or not. I do know that Steins is well represented.
oh
Uh,
yeah, he's not
and his
using the
and
who's
his
representing
lawyer
him?
has said on several occasions, and it's somewhat perplexing to me, that he is obviously asked his client, "Why'd you do this?" And he has told the media at least twice, and recently in the latest edition of the Mountain Eagle, that it was related to the civil case that our law firm and another law firm filed. I don't know exactly where he's coming from. I mean, why did Steins do this? No question what he did.
Yeah,
But twice he has said it's related to my civil case, and I've heard every speculation in the world. I don't care to repeat it. Some of it makes Judge Mullins look bad. Some of it makes him look good. And, Judge Mullins isn't here to defend himself.
sure.
But uh, whether some people ask me, why didn't I sue Judge Mullins? Well, I didn't have any evidence that he did anything to my client. We named Stines because, and this is our side of the lawsuit, and I've said this before, in fairness to Stines and the defendants, they denied the allegations. Stines, during his deposition, denied. Our position is, if you read our lawsuit, we think there was plenty of evidence that the sheriff's department knew, or certainly should have known, what Fields was doing.
Well,
That's why we filed the lawsuit.
what
And by
about
the
the
way, the lawsuit's
allegations?
pending. Lawsuit's pending. It's a civil lawsuit, and nothing's been decided yet.
Yeah, and that process may take quite a while, right? This isn't rushing through the
Yeah,
legal system, right?
it's actually been delayed. If you go through the federal court docket, it's been delayed because of there was
Mm.
an interesting order by the judge saying, well, we've had this event occur. Stein has been charged with murder, and the case was held in abeyance for a while, directly because of Stein's shooting the judge.
Yeah. I guess there really is no I try to say like allegedly and try not to spout things as facts, but in this case, I think we can say that Mickey Steins killed Judge Mullins. There's an argument over whether he murdered Judge Mullins or not, but he definitely killed him. There's no question there.
And
Um,
the interesting thing is, his lawyer says, I want to be tried in Letcher County. I don't want to change a venue.
yeah, that you brought that up. That is interesting. He thinks that he has a better shot in Letcher County.
Well, he was elected in Letcher County.
Well, he served for
Um,
22 years or something like that. I
and,
mean,
and we should not underestimate the rumors, fairly or unfairly, are out there. And I don't want to shock anybody, but sometimes there's things in social media that's not true.
I know, shocking. Yeah.
Shocking, but how many times does a criminal defendant say, I want to be tried in my home county, when there's no doubt he did what he's accused of doing? Now, the question becomes, what was his state of mind?
Yeah.
And but his lawyer has publicly said, he wants to be tried in Letcher County. Here's my prediction. I think I said this the other night. The Commonwealth can file a motion for change of venue. And if I were to predict, that motion will be granted. the case, in my opinion, will not be tried in Letcher County.
That is kind of backward from what normally would happen. Normally, it's the defense that's saying, "I want to venue out of here," right? And it's the
Absolutely.
prosecution going, "No, let's do it here." But in this case, it'll be the prosecution that wants it out of Letcher County.
Well, it's in the federal constitution. You have the right to be tried in the district where the crime occurred. It's a constitutional right that actually comes from the Declaration of Independence, where the writers of the Declaration were complaining of, I forgot the exact words, of being tried for crimes in unusual places.
Yeah.
So when they wrote the Constitution, that was the impetus to say you have the right to be tried in the district where the crime occurred. I'd like to say I'm a good lawyer. I litigated that issue and I lost. I had a local public official in Floyd County, and they filed a motion to change from the 31st Judicial District. I'm using the word district, and they wanted my client tried in the 35th Judicial District. I litigated that case, and I lost. It's Commonwealth versus Caudle, or Caudle versus Commonwealth, and I predict the Attorney General's office and the special prosecutor will file a motion to try the Stines case out of Letcher County, and they will cite the case Ned Pillersdorf lost, Caudle v. Commonwealth. And so I argued, and they said, no, the Commonwealth has a right to change a venue.
The prosecutor here will be a special prosecutor. It'll be a state-level prosecutor, you think?
Right now, it's a combination. It's the Commonwealth attorney from another East Kentucky county, and the Attorney General's office is also involved in prosecuting Steines.
Gotcha. Let's see. One more quick question. I thought this was interesting. As your wife is a retired state Supreme Court justice, have you ever had a case that ended up in your wife's court?
My wife is Janet Stumbo, a coal miner's daughter, who I met. I'm Jewish. I actually accidentally joined a Christian singles group, and I met her. And Janet was the first woman elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court. I don't want to shock your viewers. Kentucky is not the most progressive state when it comes to electing women. And forever, we could never elect a woman to the Supreme Court. And what we're proudest of, Janet's a coal miner's daughter. Yeah. And Kentucky, you elect the Supreme Court justices in roughly like congressional districts. And what we're proudest of, the first woman elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court, we got that done here in Appalachia. It didn't happen in Louisville or Lexington. And Janet she served 26 years as both the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals judge.
Wow.
But no, she automatically recuses from all my cases.
As she should. She knows.
Yeah, she should.
That's pretty cool. Billy asked Ned why they had him back at Letcher County Courthouse. I think they're saying why they had Sheriff Stines back at the Letcher County Courthouse.
That's where he was arraigned. His initial court appearance was done by Zoom in the Leslie County Jail. He was arraigned they brought in a special judge in the Letcher Courthouse to plead not guilty. They appointed, interestingly, a judge from the other side of the state. I've never heard of this judge, like 3-4 hours away. That judge will preside. The other thing going on is the Letcher circuit clerk, the clerk who handles the court documents, they've also recused. And they're using the clerk's office out of another county, which is like 2 hours away.
Do you think that was appropriate to recuse? I mean...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the circuit clerk's office, the sheriff's office across the hall.
Yeah. He
knows everyone in the clerk's office, and the clerk's office dealt with Judge Mullins on a daily, continuous basis.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I think this case gets tried. This is me as someone who watches criminal courts. I have no great affection for Sheriff Steines. I've sued him twice. But in my opinion, the case will get tried. There's been some speculation in the media that he could plead guilty to extreme emotional disturbance, first-degree manslaughter. The problem with that is that's a 10 to 20. You got to serve 85%. I don't see Steines taking that. I think he rolls the dice. And frankly, he doesn't look very healthy. You got
Yeah.
to factor that in as well. You see how much weight he's gained, and I don't see him. Let's say they plead him guilty to 15 years, first degree manslaughter. That's kind of the common speculation. I can be wrong. I don't see him agreeing to serve 12, 13 years straight.
Yeah.
I think he'll say, I'm not going to make it. And I think he rolls the dice. And my pure speculation is I call it a time to kill defense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he's going to claim that Judge Mullins was engaged in some outrageous behavior. And in one sense, it's a convenient defense. Judge Mullins isn't here to defend it, right?
Right.
And that I did what I did because he was engaged in outrageous behavior. It may well just be just the opposite. And maybe he was concerned Mullins was going to report some corruption of Stines, and it's almost like an organized crime hit. I'm going to kill the guy who's about ready to report bad stuff about me. I don't know. I have no idea.
But that does seem like a beloved county sheriff who finds out that a judge was doing horrible things, in this county, and he needed to die, and that would be his defense.
I mean, that is the social media speculation, but there's speculation all over the place.
Yeah.
And I don't want to shock your viewers. Not everything on social media is true.
Sure. Well, Ned, thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is a case that, a lot of people have watched here on the channel. Where do you think your case against, this is the last subject, the last segment of our conversation here. You've got this lawsuit, a federal lawsuit against Mr. Fields. It names Mr. Stines, and then it names the company that was the ankle monitor company, right? What's going to happen in the case? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable talking about that. I'll tell you what's public record. All the parties have agreed to go to a confidential mediation middle of February. That's all I want to say.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it, and I love it when I reach out to somebody and ask if they want to come on, and I just simply get in. Okay, made it really easy. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, hang tight for just 1 second. Hey guys, I do this every weeknight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Please come back anytime, any weeknight to the channel. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen tomorrow night, but it will happen at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So join me then. With that, I bid you adieu, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.